Thank you so much for being here, to everybody. I missed this shiur and this series, even though we had time, hopefully, to go back over some of the classes or to reflect on the ideas. But it's high time to get back into it, especially now in Chodesh Elul. There's really no better time. There's no better time than to focus on the ani l'dodi v'dodi li of the relationship with Hashem that we've been learning so deeply about, and we'll continue to do that now and in the coming weeks and in the coming months as we go deeper and deeper into this newfound exploration of the dynamics of our relationship with Hashem, right? What that really is. Who is He? What are we? And what is taking place in the space between us? So we're going to begin now. If you take a look on page Chaf Ches, so it's the side that has the title heading that says Gilui Hayofi V'Hakaras Ha'erech Bizman Hayichud. This is actually chapter 3 in the Sefer. So we already did the introduction, Parak Aleph, Parak Beis, and now we're beginning with Hashem's Hal Parak Gimel, which is a bit lengthier, but we'll try to take it paragraph by paragraph, step by step. And personally, this is one of my favorite pieces that we've done yet, this section. So it's really special to be able to share it with all of you, and I greatly appreciate that all of you are here to learn with me and to learn with us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'akol nihiyeh b'dvarei. Okay, so let's take a look at Os Aleph over here, and he says the following. The tzaddik says, Hashem Yisbarach bachar b'Yisrael amoy v'nachalasai. Hashem chose the Jewish nation. He charged them with a very specific mission. That our whole role, what it means to be a Jew, is that we're intended to be a vessel, like in modern Hebrew they call it like a kli is like technology is a kli. Doesn't actually mean a vessel like a bowl, right? But it means some kind of device. That's a better word. Some kind of device through which can be transmitted to the world Hashem's presence, Hashem's godliness. Legilui kvoid malchusai bibria. The realization that there is a creator in the world, and not simply some kind of vague notion of godliness, because that, the Gemara already tells us the nations of the world already have. Chachma b'goyim tamin, which means many things. But one of the things that it means is, in contradistinction to bina, which Chachma usually is one of those two in a pair. So if the Goyim have Chachma, the implication is that Bina they don't have. What's the difference between Chachma and Bina? Chachma is very big picture, very unspecified. And so you can find Chachma by Goyim. In the religions of the world, you can find notions of divinity, of godliness. But Bina, which, as the Maimer Chazal continues, Torah by Goyim al Tamin. Torah is Bina. Shavuos, as the Matan Torah, is Bina in relation to Pesach. So Pesach is Chachma, Shavuos is Bina, and Sukkot is Das, as the Pasuk says, Laman Yedu, Daresechem Kibu Sukkos Hashavti Es Bnei Yisrael. So you see the word Das in the context of Sukkot. And so Shavuos is Bina. And that's Torah. Torah B'Goyim Al Tamin. There's a very specific conception of divinity that the Jews have brought to the world, of not just some kind of force that's either impersonal or unemotional or unaffected or uninterested, that there's a very, very specific Jewish consciousness or biblical consciousness, as they say in the world, that we're responsible for. And when I say we're, I mean our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents and so on, all the way back to Har Sinai, when Am Yisrael were chosen to be Mamleches Kohanim V'Goy Kadosh, a kingdom of priests. Priests, as the Sfarno, on behalf of who? On behalf of the nations of the world. We're the Kohanim of the world. It means we are supposed to teach the world something. We have a message. We have some kind of communication that we're here to bring. And that communication, if you look back inside, is called Gilui Kvoid Malchusei Bibria. Is the idea and the perception that this whole world is the kingdom of the Creator, who lives in it like a king lives in his kingdom, who cares about it like a king cares about his kingdom, who's connected with it like a king is connected with his kingdom. That Hashem, Kivyachol, from our perspective, has a personality, so to speak. He's not just some, personality-less, vague figure, this idea. Hashem reveals himself with very strong feelings. That's the Hashem that we connect to. That revelation of Yud Kei Vav Kei is the shame that's made out of chesed and gevura, with love and fear and all the range of human emotions that we feel. As the Mei HaShiloach tells us, whatever we feel, God feels infinitely strong. Because it only comes from Him. We're the Tzelem Elokim. But it comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the idea that we came to bring the world. It isn't just, again, this idea, this chachma, this broad, vague perception of a God, but something very specific, with a very particular kind of coloring, a very particular kind of image, and a concept of a God that cares, of a God that's covenantal, of a God that's intimately connected to and concerned with His creation. That's our concept of what this means, Elokim. And that's our job. We're just right in the beginning, on the first page. You have sheets over here if you'd like. So right in the beginning, he says over here that we were chosen to be a kli, which we're translating either as a device or a vehicle, is also another good terminology, a merkava for, a chariot for. It's not like a kli, like a Tupperware, glass like bowl. Right? It means something more. It means that we're supposed to carry. We have a mission and obligation to reveal Hashem's presence in the world. Because before the world was created, Hashem was what He was. He always was what He was, so to speak, beyond time and space. Before this world was emanated, which is a difficult concept, what came before, what came after, right? We're talking about beyond time and space, so there is no before or after. So these are generally difficult concepts to think about. But there was something, so to speak, lacking in the revelation of Hashem's godliness within a conceptual space where people can deny God. That didn't exist. All there was just pure godliness. But the idea of there being some kind of space within which you can choose to either find Hashem or to deny Hashem, and within that space for godliness to be revealed, that was missing. Whatever that means, whatever that was. And we spoke, I think, in previous classes about how it can be that a perfect God is lacking something. And I think we explained then that this is part and parcel of His perfection. In order to be completely perfect, perfection must also contain an experience of being revealed in a place that is naturally concealing godliness, that's naturally concealing Hashem. And so in a certain way, you and I are the completion of Hashem's perfection, in as much as perfection needs to be revealed in the lower realms, and that's our job. But we are part and parcel of God's perfection. It's a difficult concept, but just to mention it. So he says, before the world was created, this aspect of God being revealed was ne'elamim, was hidden over. And it hadn't come to the fore of a created realm. It hadn't come into this space, this conceptual and certainly physical, from our perspective, space of the actual. From our perspective, this world exists. This is a real place, so to speak. And the ability for, again, godliness to be revealed in a place where there's the possibility of it being hidden, that didn't exist before the Bria. Because there was no space like that, so to speak, in whatever you can think of. Space is also a term that fails, when you're talking on this level, beyond time, beyond space. But we say an experience that God is having. This was lacking. For His presence to be revealed in a realm where it could be revealed and it could be not revealed, it could be hidden. That had not come yet to the fore. And that's what we call Malchus. Hashem's kingship was not yet manifest, was not yet revealed in this way. It was when God decided to create all, like we say in Adon Olam, Azai Melech Shemoy Nikra. Then His Malchus was revealed. That aspect in which God is sovereign, even over those places that appear to be distant, even there, I would say specifically there, God's presence is found. And that's the cherry on the top of God's perfection. That's not taking away from God's perfection. That's part and parcel, as we're explaining it, of the way in which God is perfect. Is that He is so limitless that He could even be revealed in a realm of limitation. That's called in Kabbalah, Koach HaGvul Bibilti Gvul. That the infinite being is so infinite that he's also able to be revealed in an experience of limitation. Unbelievable thing. And that's literally our task. That's what this whole world is. So we get very lost in what we think is like a normal human experience. There is no normal. This whole thing is totally bizarre. A bunch of little telemalikims, walking around and getting salads and coffees and, going to work. It's the whole thing is nuts. We have to know why we're here. We have to know what this is. Like, what is this place? What are we here for? He says, it would be impossible to say these words. Like Hashem needs something from us. Like it would be impossible to say that because again, the one thing we know about Hashem is total infinite perfection, shleimus b'chol minei shleimus, shalem, he's totally complete. It would be impossible to talk about this. Luli amram Hashem yisbarach ba'atzmai. If Hashem himself didn't say that, listen, in the ultimate sense, God doesn't need us. In the ultimate sense, we are part and parcel of godliness. So that even that framework fails. Like God needs us. Like what is us? This is all part of Einoid Malvadai. However, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a certain sense, limited his endlessness to reveal his will for this to be a thing that he kiviyachol needs, as far as we're able to understand it. And that's what the Ramchal says, if you take a look in his Sefer Klach, Piskei Chachma, which is basically a kitzur of the whole system of the Arizal. So in the 30th Pesach there, which I may have mentioned in the past, the only reason I remember it is because it's such a crucial concept, that we can't say that God needs. That we can't say, that God fundamentally lacks unless. Because then that's not the God that we believe in. We believe that Hashem is perfect with all means of perfection. But he says over there that after Hashem decided that a framework should be a certain way, so then that's his will. And his will is bound up with true, infinite, essential beingness, so to speak. Like it's really real. But it's not really real, but it's what he wants. And so if it's what he wants, and he's really real, Rabbi Nachman also hints to this in Torah Nun Beis in the 52nd lesson in Likutei Moharan, so then this is the new reality. Even if it's not ultimately, but this is the rules of the game. It's like for example, in schools, rules are taken very seriously. Does it have to be this way? That if a student does this, that, and the other thing, is it a natural reaction? Like a person sticks his hand in fire and they get burned? No, this is the rules that we decided for the school, and we all abide by them and we take them seriously. It's that kind of thing. So it's not in the ultimate sense God is not lacking. In the framework that God willed. Right? That in a certain sense, unless his godliness is revealed in a realm that theoretically could be denied, that there would be something lacking, etc. So now he needs something. Only, you understand? But only because he willed it. And so that's a very important distinction. Do you see? So we're able to say this, that it's really, from our perspective, it's real. God needs something, and we're going to learn what that is, while yet preserving his total completion, because we associate the need to his will, as opposed to himself actually. Okay, so that's how the Ramchal explains it there. So this is what God himself says. Luli amram Hashem yisbarach ba'atzmai. Am zu yitzarta li, Hashem says. I created this nation. Tihilasi yisaperu. So that they should do something. So that they should speak my praise. V'oid harbe mikrais. There are so many psukim where Hashem talks about his having created the human race and all of existence to get something, for something. Go all the way back to the beginning. Hashem creates Adam and Chava, and he puts them in Gan Eden. You remember what he put them in the Gan for? What did HaKadosh Baruch Hu put Adam and Chava in Gan Eden for? For a purpose. Do you remember? La'avda u'l'shamra. Like you do for a garden, to work the garden and to guard the garden. Which is very deep. Of course, this is the root for Sur Meira and Aseh Tov. Right? To work the garden is the Aseh Tov. And lishmar, to guard the garden, of course, is the root for all sur meira, which themselves become the root for the entire Torah. The aseis, the mitzvah aseh, is aseh tov, and that's la'avda, to cultivate the garden, which is a positive energy, to reveal something within this garden, which is a metaphor for the world. And l'shamra is to stay away, is the los aseis, which are themselves founded again on the midah. I'm so sorry that the electric thing doesn't work, so someone's going to need to run downstairs. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much. I would do it, but I'm occupied. So, I'm sorry. Thank you. So, yeah, they really do have to fix that. Hopefully they do. Which themselves are rooted more deeply in the midas of chesed and gevura. Chesed being the shoresh for all of the mitzvahs aseh, right? Let's try not to get distracted. For the mitzvahs aseh, and for la'avda, that Adam Rishon is charged with doing in the garden, which is the world. And gevura, another midah of Hashem, right? Another emotion, so to speak, of a kiviyachal of Hashem, is the root for all those asehs, the ability to withhold and to stand back. And the Ramchal, in the beginning of another sefer, Adar Bamarim, says that the whole human enterprise is these two things. Number one, to get rid of evil. Number two, to draw down good. That this is the dual task of the human being. This is bechiro, bacharta b'chayim. And that's both things. Stay away from things that we shouldn't be doing, and to do things that we should be doing. That's life. That's la'avda u'lishamra. That's a thing that God needed Adam for. And the pasuk then continues, and the pasuk says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made it so that, it's an incredible thing. The pasuk says, before the plants had sprouted, before the plants had grown, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created Adam, and Rashi tells us that there was no one to daven for the rain. There was no one to daven for it. Rashi says that all the plants were at the surface. They were ready to grow. Like all the potential was there. But we needed someone to daven for the rain. What's the whole thing there? Like HaKadosh Baruch Hu couldn't make the plants grow. Meaning, what's the whole thing? What does God need Adam for Bechlal? Create a beautiful world that would have been maybe in a certain way, on some level nicer, without the humans destroying everything. Imagine that, just a nice world. Everything functions on its own. You don't have humans muddling around and plowing down forests and building cities and polluting everything. And that's it. 6 days of the week, and that's all there is. And then the seventh day just starts Sunday again, and no one would be the wiser, and it would be fine. You'd have animals and fish and birds like paradise, right? And the answer is no, it wouldn't be paradise. It might be closer to paradise than some stages in human evolution and history, but it's not the ultimate. Because there's no one yet to recognize the one who created it, which is the ultimate purpose of existence for Adam and Chava, which is all of us, right, essentially, to be able to be medamet surah liyotzra, to be able to look around at everything that was created and say not just, oh, that's awesome, hang out and enjoy, but to say, oh wow, this is a love letter from the Creator. He's communicating with us. He's present even here, even here, even here, even here. And that's what Am Yisrael's task is. Now, Yachad Zois, going a little bit further, Hemin Hashem Yisbarach es Nevrav, Hashem created His creations in such a way shetamid yun nitzrachim uzkukim loy be'emes, that we really need Hashem all the time. Lekabel ulahashlim nafsham umachsarim ach v'rak heimenu, that we're so completely dependent on Him for life, for our neshama, as we say every morning, Elikai neshama shenasatabi. We say this shocking thing. If we don't just rattle through it, but if we focus on the meaning of the words, the end of the bracha is Baruch Atah Hashem Hamachazir Neshamos. What are the words that we use? Lifgarim Mesim. What does it mean, Lifgarim Mesim? Does anybody know? Mesim, we know what it means, right? What's a mace? Obviously, a person who's not alive anymore. What's a figar? What are figarim? Corpse, right? Dead bodies. I don't think we call a human body a carcass. I don't think. Usually we call it a corpse, I think. Right? So we say Hashem hamachazir neshamayis lifgarim mesim. That's a shocking revelation, and it's very heavy for the morning. You wake up and you realize I'm a dead body. I'm a corpse. We're mamish corpses. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us our neshama. We need Him, not just we need Him for things. The fact that there's a we is already dependent on Him. Forget that we need things from Him. We're complete. Again, even the word reliant on Him, it's not even a thing. We're generated by Him every split second of life. So Hashem created the world in such a way that our very souls are received from Him. That's lekabel. Ulahashlim nafsham. If we are to rectify our souls, further we need Him. That was the shir I gave earlier on Sichos Haran. We need to daven for every little tiny bit of growth. We need to daven for it. We can't do it on our own. Even if we have all the right ideas and all the right guidance and all the right practice, it's much harder. I said it's easier, not said than done, but read than done. Because today everybody reads, so you're reading stuff in books. It's easier read than done. You can read it, but to do it is incredibly difficult. We all know what we need to do, but none of us do it fully. We do it to varying degrees. So we need to daven for that also. We need to daven, like Rabbi Nachman says, and the Berditchever Rav says, "V'eschanan el Hashem ba'eis hahi leimar." Says the Berditchever. What does that mean? Not just that Moshe Rabbeinu davened at that time, leimar, saying, "Please let me into Eretz Yisrael." Says the Berditchever. It's talking about me and you, and it's talking about those moments which Rabbi Nachman also references in Torah Chav Hey and Tinyana, the 25th lesson in the second volume of Likutei Moharan, that sometimes a person comes to daven and they just cannot daven, one reason or another. Can't find the right words, not in the mood, can't connect, not going. Says the Berditchever Rav, "Eschanan el Hashem ba'eis hahi." Sometimes you need to daven to Hashem, leimar, so that you can daven. It's "Eschanan el Hashem ba'eis hahi," leimar. So we need Hashem for everything, right? Even asking Hashem for the things that we know we need Him for. We need Him for everything in the world. So when we think about this inextricable bond, this intimate connection that the Master of the world has with His chosen nation, again, who are chosen for this mission, we have a very specific message to share with the world. But what's the use if we don't know the message, right? So we have to be studying these kinds of teachings. Not just enough. And I will never tire of repeating it again and again. I know I say it every year. It's not just enough. The what, where, how, and when of Judaism, the halachas, all of that is for something. It's meant to strengthen a consciousness that we're meant to live with. That's called emunah. And to really be able to speak with at least some degree of clarity. What distinguishes our emunah from the emunahs of the nations of the world? Well, what is unique about our revelation? What do we have to say to humanity? And this is crucially important. So when we take the time to focus on this incredible yichud, on this incredible relationship that Hashem has with His nation, based on everything that we've said in the previous chapter and the previous two chapters, we understand Hashem is trying to build up, remember, our sense of self. Hashem wants us here, needs us here. And that must mean that He respects us a pretty powerful amount. If the infinite Creator, who has everything, for whatever reason that's completely beyond us, with all the explanations that we'll give, all the different reasons, but they're insufficient. Why did God create the world? Ani lo yodea. In Kabbalah we call it ayin, because the sphere of Keser, which is the highest revelation of godliness, correlates to God's will, His motive to create the world, and that's always called in Kabbalah ayin. Ayin means nothingness, means we don't know anything about it. I don't know why God wanted this, but He did. We spoke earlier in previous shirim about the concept of cheshek, ki chashak Hashem amai, right? Hashem desired. We said, where does the desire come from? You don't have to have a reason for it. It's just, we said kacha. Kacha just is. As Rashi Tevis, keser kol haksarim, I think we mentioned, right? Which is the highest will of all wills, is just kacha. I don't know. It just is. Right? So I don't have to have a reason for it. That's called keser kol haksarim, the highest, earliest motivation. We don't know what it is. But for whatever reason it is, the infinite being decided that He's going to partner together with another entity. Or an entity that experiences itself as a separate entity, even though it really isn't. It's a spark of the divine. And of course I'm speaking about the human being. And when we double and triple and quadruple and so on and so forth, we get humanity. But it's just one being, billions and billions and billions of times. Think about that for a second. If you were the only person in the world, chayiv kol adam loymar b'shvili nivra olam, because that's what it means ba'omek. There aren't billions of people. There's one person billions of times. We don't get lost in the sea of humanity. Each one of us is a defined Tselem Elokim, from the top of our head, bottom of our feet. Tselem Elokim. And you were the only one. Chazal are saying it would have been worth to create the world just for you, And now we understand what it means to have created the world just for you, meaning whatever we're supposed to get out of the world. Whatever God was supposed to kiviyachol get out of his world, it would have been worth creating the whole world just for one human being to partner with him. That's an incredible thing. That's an incredible amount of empowerment to recognize that. Like, I'm a partner of the Ein Sof, of the Infinite One. Tremendous. So Mevinim, we have to understand that this is a big deal. The whole thing, Hashem is not trying to push us down like so many people grow up with the conception of God that he's looking at every opportunity to somehow manage to, slight us and hit us and punish us and guilt us and shame us. And it's the exact opposite. The exact opposite. He's looking to build us up. And he puts in parentheses, it's just, we're saying it in words that we can understand, that just however much this is possible. And this, and only this, is the path through which the human being can come to what's called dveikus, which is a true relationship with Hashem. Why are we saying this is the only way? Because we said in previous prakim, the last chapter specifically, but chapter 1 as well, that if the makabel, remember, doesn't feel like they're contributing, then it's not a real relationship. That there has to be a komas makabel. It has to be an entity on its own, with its own sense of self. Then it's panim bepanim. Then it's two kruvim that we said in Shirim, they're the same size, not an infinitely huge kruv and a tiny kruv. Hashem is not looking for that kind of relationship. Hashem is not going to shrink himself to the human. But Hashem is attempting to get the human being to realize how infinite they are. I'll say that again. The kruvim are the same size, not because God puts himself into a man. That was a different religion. And that's the distortion, one of the many distortions of Christianity. God doesn't need to put himself into a man to relate to man. God is trying to expand man infinitely so that he can face God face to face, on God's terms, not on man's terms, because that's how powerful we are. That's what it means to be at Tselem Elokim. HaHisbodedus im Hashem Yisbarach. When a person walks out to do personal prayer with the Master of the world, which we've described as being those moments of total, authentic, face-to-face, friendship-oriented relationship with God. This is a experience of togetherness, of unity, that sort of shakes out from the inner recesses of the Jewish heart the essence of what it means to be a Jew. And it draws it out in front of our eyes so we cannot escape it, nor do we want to. As we said earlier, that in order for the person to receive, but in a way of panim bepanim, in a real, authentic, totally symbiotic way, he has to feel like this is a real friendship. You remember? Otherwise, he's always going to feel slighted. He's going to always feel like the taker. And in some sense, he's not quite sure. Does the person actually want me? The person's saying nice words. But you remember everything that we learned before. So you remember that I said the thing with my father and Rav Shlomo Cheshen, right? That was a relationship. It wasn't givers and takers. It was a real friendship. A real friendship. So it has to be panim bepanim, shaveh b'shaveh, sheyeda mihu, that a person should know who they are, v'yaker be'erka, and a person should have a sense of self. They should have a sense of self-worth. They should understand that not only am I worthy in a relative framework, I was talking on an individual level, I mean all of us, we are all infinitely worthy as we are at any given moment in our lives with whatever's going on. And only in this way, which is a huge secret and such an important principle for our generation, only in this way, only in this way will a person's faith be the opposite of a faith under duress. That's what it means. Emunah shall sevel. Sevel is pain. Sevel is like a person lisbol, is suffering or carrying something. It also means to be patient, right? Because generally a person that's going through something is lisbol, tzarich lisbol, it says, so it means both things. But in this context, it means like a heavy burden. Where a person has emunah shel sevel, where a person's forced into believing. But it didn't come from the person. There isn't a sense of self. On the contrary, sometimes emunah could kill a person, in a sense. Like Chazal say, Loi zachan asa sam maves. If a person doesn't engage with Torah in a healthy way, it becomes a poison for them. I didn't say that. Chazal said that. In the Torah. Like they said it about the Torah in the Gemara. If a person engages with Torah in a healthy way, with healthy perspectives, so then samchaim, then it's mamish an elixir of life. Bring a person to the greatest joy and osher and everything they want and need. If it's not that way, poison, sam maves. Because an emunah that strips a person of their sense of self and their identity, where they feel that all they're here to do is to be God's servant and to carry on and suppress every aspect of their own creativity, of their own thinking, of their own feeling, etc., 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 and to just shut it all away and to be forced, like forced slavery, into the world of Yiddishkeit. So that's called emunah shel sevel. That's called the faith of duress. That's not where it's at. That's the opposite of where it's at, actually, because that's not called panim b'panim. You think such a person comes into shul and meets Hashem face to face? No, they're walking cowering like this, like their head between the tail between their legs. That's not how it's supposed to be. I mentioned in previous shiurim, the Ishbitzer says that unlike all other religions, when the name of the deity, the conception of the deity is pronounced, that's when everybody bows. That's how you find. That's when the bowing is done. When they refer to the divine, everybody falls on their face. By us, it's the exact opposite. Baruch, we bend our knees. Ata, we bow down. Yud Ke Vav Ke, can't say Hashem's name without meeting Him face to face, standing up tall and strong and proud. That's how Hashem wants a relationship. Not hunched over. Strong with a sense of self, with a sense of confidence, with a realization of what we are. It's not a faith of duress, that a person suppresses their own value, and isn't even aware of what they have to share, what they have to give, how this is a partnership, this is not like slavery. It's like he doesn't have a choice. So he's forced into believing. What can you do? So that's why he chose it. That's not the shleimus of Yiddishkeit. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's not a relationship. That's a forced marriage. A forced marriage is not a relationship. I hear some of you thinking, HaKadosh Baruch Hu forced us at our Sinai, under the mountain. It's an interesting sugya. But that's not how it's supposed to be. That's not how it's supposed to be. Ella, but emunah is supposed to be mitoch shemakir erkoi, a person who recognizes their value, umiskadeles koimasai, and they're able to respect their sense of self. And mizeh mis'ar ba'av alavei al yichud harai. And then a person from that place chooses to connect to the master of the world, not because they are forced to, because society expects them to, or because their mashgiach in yeshiva is going to pour water on him if he doesn't wake up for shachas, and this, that, and the other thing, but it comes from a place of such wanting. Like a confident choice, like a mature choice. This is not something I'm pressured into because I happen to be part of this community, and what's going to be if I don't? No, this is something I choose. But in order for it to be something that I choose, there has to be an I. There has to be a sense of self. Because only with a sense of self comes choice. A person who doesn't have a sense of self doesn't have choice. And a person who doesn't have choice doesn't have a sense of self because they're forced into it. And guess what? HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Bechir. Because He wanted us to have a sense of self. Because these two things are in an inverse relationship. Choice and a lack of selfhood. When a person doesn't have a self, there's nobody to choose. And when a person isn't given a choice, then there's no selfhood. And Hashem says, listen, we just learned it 2 parshas ago. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Nesati l'fneicha miyan bracha u'klala. I put it in front of you. It's on the table. Ubacharta b'chaim. I'm telling you, choose life. If not, there's consequences. Not because Hashem's looking to punish, but you stick your hand in fire, and that's the nature of the world. It's going to destroy you. You want a life of sweetness, of joy, of clarity, of sensitivity, broad-mindedness, strong, powerful, healthy relationships. a sense of meaning, purpose, contributing to the essence of why there is a world at all, and being able to see the coherence and the unity and the shining glory and the magic of every place in the world and every moment in time. Says Hashem, but He gives us choice. And that's something that so many people don't know. And we're not mechanech our kids this way. We force them. So chinuch is important. There's no question. Chinuch is a thing. We have to be mechanech according to certain guidelines. But this element of choice is super crucial. What do we gain if we force every single person to keep every single halacha, but we force them? What do we gain? We have a bunch of robots then. What did God gain now that there's a bunch of corpses that are wrapping leather, cow straps on their hand? What's the point? It's supposed to be for men. It's supposed to be an ois. It's a sign. What's a sign? A sign is a reminder. Meaning, it's there to say something. It's something. It's not stam like some, religious activity. And then Baruch Hashem, the Nefesh HaChaim saved our life and said that even if a person puts on tefillin without any intention, it's also good. Cool. But that's not the l'chatchila. That's not, everybody knows that that's not what God wanted. Take a look at the Navi Yeshayahu. They were doing everything right. Hashem says, I don't want your karbanas. You don't want my karbanas. But I was raised to think that if I don't bring a karban, I'm going to hell. I bring karbanas for you. Hashem says, that's not what I want. I want your heart. Bisvasav kibduni. Everybody's saying the right words. But v'libam richak mimeni. But Hashem says, I want you, not your words, not your tefillas, not your karbanas, not your tefillin. It's in Shabbos. It's heartbreaking because we so miss the boat. Like we so miss it. So it's so sad. But so we have to wake up. And Baruch Hashem, we have a privilege of being connected to tzaddikim, to learn words of das and divrei likim chayim that are rare to find. Rare. This element of choice is crucial. That's called Yichud HaRa'ui. A person cannot come into a relationship with Hashem that's called Yichud HaRa'ui if it's not with a sense of self, having chosen it, full-heartedly, full-mindedly, full-throatedly, with everything. Yeah, what do you want to say?
I just want to check I understand properly what you're saying. You were saying in the past that when you're giving tzedakah or something, it has to be both ways.
Right.
One feeling it more than the other. But then you're also saying that God's not going to nullify Himself enough to a human level. So how do we get that equal? Is that by understanding where we come from and our purpose, so that we can get higher to God's level to have that? Or? Right,
or to not. I wouldn't say that we should work on ourselves to get to that level, but the realization is that we are so much more than we think we are. We are ready to meet God at God, so to speak, because we're the embodiment of His revelation in the world. And on that level, so as he's going to discuss and describe at depth and length in the coming chapters, there's this equal shared sense of identity, between us, and there's a shared language. And we're going to learn about how to talk to Hashem, but also we're going to learn about how to hear Hashem talking back to us. Because Hashem doesn't talk with words or WhatsApps like we might think. We have to know what language He speaks and how to understand the language. Yeah.
You're saying Hashem doesn't want us to do the mitzvahs unless it's an actual choice, a proper choice. So how do we educate our kids?
So I said,
we say to them, up to you.
That's right. So that's the challenge. So so chinuch, like I said before, it's not a free for all, and none of us were raised that way, nor do we try to raise our children that way. But I think that there's a decidedly different tone in the hearts and minds of parents that don't know this, and the hearts and minds of parents that do know this. Even if the chinuch looks exactly the same, but the subtlety of the urgency and chas v'shalom, the shame and the guilt that can come around parents who absolutely need their kids to be exactly like this 1 billion% of the time, or else. I don't know. Nobody really thinks that far, or else.
Unusual, I've rarely come across maybe a couple of people that I know that says, tell the kids, it's up to you.
Well, at a certain point, it's going to anyway be up to them. That for sure is true. Yeah. At a certain point, it's going to be up to them. Hopefully, if we build healthy relationships, there will always be, that space where there's influence, there's hashpa, there's a respect, and so on. But as the children are developing, to be able to encourage them to dig deeper, and I think to dig deeper, and to know that there are answers to find, and that they shouldn't suffice with just the surface level, And so we know that this is MS, and we hopefully can argue on behalf of it and explain why it is that we choose to be engaged in this great Jewish experience. So we want that the framework should be there. That's what chinuch is, lechanech. Is to inaugurate, to start them on the journey. We want to give them a leg up. Otherwise, it can be difficult later on in life when a person discovers it. So hopefully, the framework is there, and that's true, and that's for sure true. But along with that comes this expressed hashkafa, not just like innate. It's talked about. That there's more. Like this is not just what it's for. And we speak a language of relationship, and in that way, hopefully, this is something that develops at one point or another. Each person on their own journey, Each person on their own journey. But it's a shift. Okay, let's push a little bit further. Hadveikus im Hashem Yisbarach eina mevia meriros v'nechisus benefesh hamekabel. For some reason, people have this conception that the closer to God you are, the sadder you have to be. Right? That a person who's really the most serious and the most, that person must be really doing tshuva properly and really close to God. And he says that's not the case. He says closeness to Hashem is not supposed to bring bitterness, and a feeling of a negation of the self. The closer a person is to Hashem, the more precious they understand themselves to be. The preciousness of that person's value and worth is revealed. Now he puts in parentheses, as he's going to discuss later on, Amram, of course, there are different times, that it's a time to make a calculation in ourselves and to recognize our things to fix, and we're not perfect, and we have to get honest and true, and we're going to get to that in the later chapters. Now we're just laying the general framework and foundation. But we're not speaking about this now. After a person comes back from speaking to God face to face, you have a personal meeting with the infinite Creator who's listening to us, every word that we say, who cares about our lives, who wants us to talk to Him in our own words and tell Him everything. Amr Yehudi Latzeis, a Jew is supposed to walk out of that experience Malay hakara be'erkai hamiyuchad lai, clear, with full clarity as to how precious they are. That's what a Jew should feel when you turn around and you walk out of the forest, or you walk out of the field, or the park, or the room, or wherever it is that a person's doing HaHisbodedus. We're supposed to walk out feeling special, feeling big, strong, powerful, holy. That maybe you weren't feeling that way going in. But the very premise of HaHisbodedus reminds us of just how incredible it is that the infinite Creator considered me so worthy that, again, from my perspective, there's nobody else in the world but me, and that I have a partnership with Him, and He trusts me, la'avdo l'shamra, to cultivate His world and to fix it, and in so doing, to complete His perfection, kiviyachol. It's like unreal. This is what we should feel in HaHisbodedus. How could a person not be joyous after this? How could a person not be in a good mood? V'tayv levav, lavadis Hashem, to then go and to choose to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to choose to work on this relationship. In this moment, God is like whispering into His ears our praise, all the positive things that we have, that we feel sometimes more, sometimes less, that we must have been sent to the world to reveal these, what's called nikudos tovas, these good points. That Rabbi Nachman says, each person has a nikuda tova masha'ein b'chaveiro. Every person has something precious and special that they excel in. That there's something very unique that they have that nobody else has. HaHisbodedus is a time to recognize that. Kiviyachal henik le'mila tova. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving us a good word. God's giving us a compliment, giving us chizuk. Gilabai, He's revealing within us es nikudasai hatoiva be'emes. That point of unique goodness. Which even if a person is blind to it, chas v'shalom, when a person isn't able to feel that way, the fact of doing HaHisbodedus is so precious. I mean, that says so much about the person. Imagine a person goes into HaHisbodedus and can't find one positive thing about them. I mean, hold on one second. You're of the top 1% of humanity that actually took time today to speak to God in their own words because you believe in Him, because you believe that you were sent here on a mission and you care enough about your life, not chas v'shalom, not to waste it. What an incredible thing! What an incredible miracle! It would be interesting to look up the calculation of how many lifetimes it would take to watch all of YouTube. I don't know. Probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Right? How many thousands of hours are uploaded to YouTube every minute? It's like something crazy like that. There is so much distraction out there. A person literally could spend their entire life distracted by all the various things and not stop for 1 second to contemplate why it is that we're here, b'chlal, and what this place is, and what it is to be humans, like I always say, with 5 fingers and not 6. Like, what is this? What is it? Why are we alive? And we get so caught up. I've given a mashal previously in other shiurim. I apologize if you've heard it from me, but there used to be a computer game when I was growing up. We actually played games on the computers. Some of you might remember. It's wild because I'm so young, but we can still talk about like a generation. It's like a generation ago. It's crazy, you know. But there was this game called SimCity, where you would build theme parks, amusement parks with roller coasters and different things. And I remember still as a kid being shocked at the ease with which these little men that you dropped into the amusement park immediately scampered off to the rides. And immediately you put them down and they were off. Like they were just born and you drop them in and they're on roller coasters already without questioning it. What? Like what? Who put me here? Well, what is this? Immediately. And I think to myself, this is how life is. This is how life is. We're just little SimCity people. We're little neshamas. We're dropped into the world. It takes us a couple of years to grow up and become conscious. And we immediately scamper off into life without stopping to wonder, what is this place? What is this thing they call nature, which comes from the word natural, which I think is supposed to mean like not cool or like not amazing, right? That's the word natural. It's just, no, it's natural. Like the opposite of a miracle. That we think it's natural. We live because we're surrounded by nature. What's a miracle? What's natural? Miracles upon miracles upon miracles. As the tzaddikim say, there are some miracles that happen less often, those we call nisim, and then there are nisecha shebechol yoyim imanu v'anav loisecha v'devesecha shebechol eis erev avoyker v'tzarayim. That the whole life is an astonishing miracle. Astonishing miracle. I'm telling you, it should blow our minds. Every single aspect of life. Every single facet and aspect. Nisim and nifla'is. So what a nekuda taiva that a person finds time in such a confusing world to actually achieve the penultimate purpose for which the human being was created, which is to recognize the Creator. That's it. I mean, moments of HaHisbodedus are the point. They are the pinnacle, the purpose. And when a person is able to inculcate the consciousness of HaHisbodedus, and to find a way to use their many other nekudas taivas to bring that to others, and to bring that to the world at large, we're literally healing the world. We're literally bringing the world closer and closer to Geula. In a metaphysical sense, spiritual sense, in a very practical sense. Kimedur La'alan, as we'll explain further, Shezeh kol soid habriya. This is why the world was created. L'naser pnimius genuza, to detach, so to speak, some hidden element of interiority within godliness, kaviyachol, meaning to give it its own sense of self, which is the human consciousness, or consciousness as a whole. It's called Panpsychism, right, where there's consciousness in everything, which of course there is. And then to build it up and to bring it into a face-to-face encounter with its source. That's the whole thing of creation, where God creates a world that seemingly seems separate from His being, meaning from godliness, so that there can be a relationship. And if this sounds familiar, it's because it is. Because where do we find this model first? By Adam and Chava. Where the Medrash tells us that Adam and Chava were created du partsufim, they were one being. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu separates between them, builds up each as their own entity, and then turns them around to come face to face. That's a metaphor. Did it happen? Didn't it happen? Obviously, standard hashkafa is to believe that it actually happened the way that it was. Lav dafka, but that's what we generally believe, but who cares? But there's so much depth, because it's talking about all of creation. That there was just Adam, so to speak. There was just HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvayda v'atzmai. And then God created a world called Chava. And God built it up. And then God says, okay, now let's come face to face. And together, like husband and wife, let's bring a new entity into creation. That's more than I could have had, says Hashem, kiviyachol, on his own, so to speak. Then that's the whole purpose of the whole thing. Ulatzigal noichach pnei ba'aleha. Kifi shanavroam la'achar shenenaser v'nechzevu mimekayram v'nivru. Because after creation is, so to speak, created in such a way where it looks separate from the divine, and the human being experiences the possibility of choice, which means that God moves himself out of the way and allows the human being to have an autonomous sense of self where we can choose. Then and only then can there be the ultimate expression of God's infinity within a world that appears to be finite and not subsumed with the infinity of God, meaning there's the possibility to deny him, and even there, in such a place, like we mentioned at the beginning of this year, there are those that are seeing past the illusion, and that's the greatest keser. It's the crown on top of God's head, which again is a metaphor. It's the crowning jewel of God's godliness, of God's perfection. That's called Eishes Chayil, which is Chava, which is creation, that becomes a Teres Bala. The greatest pinnacle, zenith, what are other synonyms? Penultimate. The ultimate, the last brick, so to speak, in the infinite structure of infinity, so to speak, is this world and the experience of history, 7,000 years, starting from a place of intense consciousness of godliness, devolving quickly into polytheism, which means ethnic gods, which is the impossibility of humanity really getting together because each god is fighting each other, which is Migdal Bavel, where it's split into different languages. Doesn't just mean that they actually spoke different languages, but it means that they didn't understand each other, that human beings can't get along. And then Avraham Avinu wakes up and says, no, we actually can all get along, and that we're all one nefesh. And then Avraham Avinu gives that message over to Yitzchak. Yitzchak gives it over to Yaakov. Yaakov is 12 Shvatim. 12 Shvatim become 70 members of a family that go down to Egypt and emerge 3 million people and make their way to Sinai. Chosen to bring the world back to the state that it was in the beginning of Adam and Chava Koydem Achet, where it was panim b'panim. Before they hid away, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to say, Ayeka. Because Ayeka doesn't mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't know where Adam and Chava are hiding in the garden. God knows everything. He knows where Adam and Chava are. He doesn't need to say Ayeka. What HaKadosh Baruch Hu is really saying is that this whole thing of me creating the world, Adam, Chava, microcosms of the world, is that I mean to build a relationship with you, panim bepanim. So Ayeka doesn't just mean where are you, like where in the garden are you. Ayeka means where are you? Where did you go? Where did you go? You lost your sense of self, that you're so easily swayed by the nachash and pushed over without the confidence of being able to stand up and mamish make a choice. Ayeka. Okay, so this is just, we're I don't know what exactly we did. We did a lot, hopefully, I think. And hopefully there's some benefit and use. We didn't do much in the way of really moving into the point, but just I think maybe like sort of an overview of what we had learned in the previous weeks is that the whole thing here again is the relationship face to face, and that requires the Jew to have a sense of self that's built up, and that's what's taking place during HaHisbodedus. That's what we hear, so to speak, HaKadosh Baruch Hu whispering to us in such a way that we walk away. Again, not bowing over, bent down, but strong, with confidence, with joy, with a sense of mission and clarity, and that's the idea. But as just Hashem, next week we'll carry on. There's a very beautiful taich on V'hatzne leches im Hashem lekacha, which is super duper deep. So there's a lot to look forward to for next week. If you don't want to keep the sheets, you just bring them back to the front, and I'll bring them out again. And we're gonna just open for questions if anybody had anything they wanted to ask or share. Yeah.
So just going back to the point you made about Hashem keeping the mountain over us.
Yes.
Tonight,
Yes.
I was discussing it last night with my sister.
Look at that.
So nice to have that point there.
Yeah.
He was like, Hashem placing that on top of our head, giving us a sense of like, not threat, but like we were scared. Was that like, I haven't, the question is, was that to give us an opportunity to like back out of it, so that Hashem could say, look, like you were the chance to not be a part of it?
Interesting.
Because he gave all the nation a chance to be a part of it. So when we said no, that initial one, we said this with blind and minna, really, could it have been a chance like for us to like take Hashem out? Obviously we didn't.
I mean, but the other choice was death. So it's not as if God said, "Hey, hang out here," or like scamper off, and it was like into the grave. So generally the way that we understand it, based on Tosfos and Shabbos, that asks this as a question, meaning what nasa v'nishma? Ma'idai rabbi le'araisa, the Tosfos asks. It's a huge question on the whole Kabbalah Satar. We were forced into it. What's the big deal? We said nasa v'nishma shkarich. You hold a mountain over our head, etc. So the way that Tosfos seems to frame it, and the way that the Mefarshim generally understand it, is a question. Like how could it be that we were forced? There are many different approaches. One of the approaches is that the element of being forced was when times would become so difficult for Jews that our previous willingness to have chosen would no longer be tenable in terms of an expectation that Jews should still be Jewish, in the most difficult, painful circumstances that we would need to go through. Maybe many of us, Nebuch, Rahman al-San, are still going through, even today. So for those moments, HaKadosh Baruch Hu held the mountain and said, no, I mean this. Like if you're in, you're in. But so that doesn't negate the choosing. I mean, we chose. Under normal circumstances, we chose. If I'm not mistaken, this is the Berditcher's approach. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying it's not always going to be so, so these are not always going to be the circumstances. So for times like that, when out of shigayon, out of total insanity, being pushed to the, to the fringe of sanity, a person will run away. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you're mine. Like we're in this together. Another, I think, more basic element is that within the choosing of a marriage, so to speak, for example, comes together with that certain conditions that are innate to the marital bond. So it doesn't mean that a person chooses those conditions, but that's just the nature of marriage, right? That means that a person chooses this, makes a full-hearted choice. But then also there's like the aspect of shtar, like the Baal Shem Tov as a Torah, right? There's the aspect within a relationship of like the things you got to do. Even though those weren't the things that I chose. I didn't when I says, she said like, yes, I do, or whatever I do, she's not saying I do to make dinner every night for that's not the idea. Nor does she necessarily have to. Many men cook and so on, but the men for sure have to take out the garbage. That for sure I know. That's not the woman's job. But so nobody has that in mind. It's like you call a mom and dad, after the 8th or 9th date, and you say, "Mom, I have this incredible news. I think I've made the decision. I'm going to take out the garbage with this particular girl, for the rest of my life." That's not it. There's a choosing of the relationship. Along with that comes the guidelines and the parameters of the relationship. So from that standpoint, Nasa v'nishma is what's called in the Lashon Zar Kodesh kesef. Right, Isha niknes b'shloisha derachim, right, kesef, shtar, right. So that's the kesef, that's the kisufim, that's the yearning, that's the wanting, that's when everything's good and la'age b'bayker chazdecha. Shtar is, and the same thing is with chinuch, right? Meaning there is a shtar aspect of chinuch, raising children, where there are guidelines and there are things that are expected and so on, but that can't come at the expense of the kesef, of the kisufim. Kisufim means yearning, of the heart-centric focus, where all of these different things are presented as opportunities to keep us conscious of everything positive in the world. And when it's presented in that way, I think it's a bit easier of a sell. But these two things are necessary as one. Remember, la'avda u'l'shamra. Adam Rishon is told two things. La'avda is mitzvah aseh, is aseh tov, but l'shamra is the sur meirah. And that's also part of the picture. Okay, that makes it a bit easier to understand. Okay, anybody else? Yeah, sure.
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yes, you may. Just do it very loud if you can, so everyone can hear you.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you so much. So my question is, you said that we're not supposed to lose our individuality in the service of Hashem, but I've been learning that in order to access higher level of consciousness with Hashem, we're supposed to kind of give ourselves up, kind of our identity, in order to become echad with Him. Like, how do we kind of hold both of these like concepts and seemingly paradoxes?
Right. Excellent question. Excellent question. I think he's going to address it, so I don't want to say so much about it, because I think we're gonna actually get to this point. We're going to speak about bittul, which is like a fundamental concept in Hasidus, right? Bittul, like how does bittul, nullifying ourselves, come into the context of having a strong sense of self? So that's very powerful. But suffice it to say that it's a misnomer. So it's a misunderstanding that these two things are in conflict or contradictory. They're not in conflict. They're not contradictory. And on the contrary, they really mean the same thing. Because bittul doesn't mean that I see myself as being a nothing and having nothing to share and no use and nothing to give and no purpose and no worth. Bittul means that I recognize that all of our very strong megadoses of worth that all of us have are nullified to, not just nullified, that's not bittul. It's bittul is a half a sentence. It's levatel li, are nullified to this relationship in such a way that we're expected to walk in and to use our creativity in the context of the relationship, not outside the relationship. So in that sense, it's being mevatel, much like an isha is called kiddushin, right? And the Gemara tells us right in the beginning of kiddushin, why is it called kiddushin? Because we're mekadesh the isha that is like hektish. And he's going to make reference to that. And the men as well. Kadesh la kuli alma hektish. She's separate, kadosh, from the rest of the world, but that doesn't mean so that now she's nothing. It means no. It's the sur meirah, but there's a very strong aseh tov element, meaning she is supposed to be completely present in this relationship. And so from that standpoint, there's an aspect of a woman that once she makes a decision to spend the rest of her life with one particular man, there's a certain disconnect from the possibility of being connected to any number of people, right, in that way. And so in that sense, that's what bittul is. Levatel means is that there's no sense of identity outside the context of this relationship. But it doesn't chas v'shalom mean that a person sees themselves as having nothing to, no value and no worth and no sense of self. It means that we utilize our sense of self to choose, to bring that possibility of choosing into the context of the relationship with Hashem alone. And that becomes our identity. That's what we're here for. Does that answer things a little bit?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm
Okay,
going to
great.
have to meditate on that one.
Yes, these are big ideas. Please do meditate on it. Good. Okay. Chazei Hashem, thank you so much for joining. Thank you to everybody for coming. It's great to be back. We said a lot, covered a lot of ground, and take the next week to think about the ideas. And the main thing is to put them into practice, not just to learn it, but to actually do this HaHisbodedus. Can't forget. Okay. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Chazak v'yamatz. Thank you so much for joining.